This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our NSA Professional Services Series number 52. Very excited today that with us we've got Cyberscience with a presentation on Cyberquery, which is for ad hoc reporting and data discovery. So just a quick cover of today's agenda. We'll do the intros of our presenters today. And then why Cyberquery and how that really assists clients with your ERP solution. And then we actually have a customer use case that we'll be going through as well. And then again, we talked about the Q&A sessions that we've got coming up as well. And then there's going to be a demo that'll be a part of this also. And stick around because we do have a very special offer, as we typically do with our webinars, that we'll be covering at the end with a free test drive. And then, we'll continue on from there. So I'm Brian Weaver, VP of Services with NSA, and I'm pleased to introduce Brad Jackson. So Brad is a Business Development Manager with Cyberscience, and he'll be doing a lot of the presenting that we've got today. And you see Brad's contact information here on the screen as well. And then our very own Brian Jones, who's our VP of Technology. I know many of you know Brian, but he'll be also presenting certain elements of today's session also. And then, of course, myself, and you can contact any of us following the session if you've got further interest. So I'm going to go through this kind of quick. Most of you know who we are, NSA. We were founded in '84, and this is all we do, right? We work with distributors and specifically with the Infor SX.e and CloudSuite Distribution product. And, we've been at this for quite some time. And Cyberquery is now part, or Cyberscience, rather, is now part of our NSA Plus services of solutions, which is all the add-on solutions that we do around the ERP. With that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Brad. Brad, welcome and thank you.
Hey, thank you, Brian, for those introductions. And we are excited to have the partnership with NSA. We think we can join forces to really help out those using SX.e and CSD. About Cyberscience. Cyberscience started roughly 45 years ago. It initiated with our owner having a consulting gig for a couple different clients where he had discovered when developing SQL, structured query languages, up against different databases, that the language and the SQL code was slightly unique depending on the database type to bring back optimized data. So that was how Cyberquery was born. Cyberquery is an English-like English-like database query language that has eventually changed over to a graphical type front end. Of course, you can still do that query language. And we've continued to invest heavily into the product over these years. You won't see us pop up on your cell phone ads. You won't see us in Super Bowl ads as well. That's because of that heavy investment in development. And specifically, we often work within application markets. So this one happens to be Infor, of course. We've worked with Infor and different Infor products for many years. And of course, today we'll talk about using Cyberquery up against SX.e and CSD. We see that there's more value in trying to build custom solutions for specific applications that that customer base can use over and over. We've continued to focus on the three pillars. Those are ease of use, that speed, that's the whole reason it started, again, for optimized SQL, and depth of functionality. And hopefully, just with the brief bit you'll see today, you'll see kind of those different pieces. And in addition, the experienced staff that Cyberscience has. I've been with the company over 20 years, as have most of the people here working at Cyberscience. So it really is a unique place.
Yeah,
Brian,
so
are you going to cover these? Okay.
yeah, I'll cover these. So, one of the questions is why Cyberquery? We started getting into obviously the CSD business, and Burst is the software that's included with CSD, and it's a BI tool. And there are other BI tools out there, but it's not a great, hey, I just want to get a report, I just want to find some data. Um, so we went looking, and we had some experience with Cyberquery from past lives and some customer experience. So we wanted to find something that was an all-inclusive, I would call it an all-inclusive report writer. We can just pick data, we can pick tables, join them together, and get data. This data can also be near real-time data. So it's not like a BI tool where the data is a day behind. The data in this case can be 10 minutes behind, 5 minutes behind, 15 minutes behind, depending on what the data is. But we're not waiting for a refresh to happen in the middle of the night to get us new information. So that's where we settled on Cyberquery. And again, they've got a rich history in reporting and a very mature, well-developed product. As you see here, they've been working with SX for 8 years and 20 years with different Infor products. Um, it's also a product that works with both SX and CSD. So if you are running SX today and looking for something to bridge that gap to CSD, very little needs to be done to the reports to move them over to CSD. It's also a full inclusive report writing system. It's both the client and the data repository, as well as connectivity to both CSD and we can connect to other data sources. We're not limited to only Infor products, so we can connect to, example here would be Salesforce. And again, some of the examples we can do: operational reporting, financial statements, dashboards. A lot of the BI stuff can happen in Cyberquery as well, but again, like I said, our purpose here was to find a functional ad hoc type report writer. So go ahead, Brad.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Brian. I'm going to cover a use case recently for a client that started out with Cyberquery up against CSD, and this is Porter Pipe, Stacy Pike. She is a BI analyst. And this was a quote that she provided us. She says, without a doubt, she loves Cyberquery. It was easy to pick up and start creating reports and ad hoc analysis. When we asked her, well, why did you choose Cyberquery? She said, well, former ad hoc tools are being sunset. They had SX.e in the past as well and had used other tools for data discovery, ad hoc reporting, that they wanted that access to that transactional level detail as quickly as possible. So she found Cyberquery was a good fit for that. Ad hoc reporting capabilities, as mentioned, they want to look at the data how they want to see it because they always have their own custom needs. It's powerful and it's flexible. We have a metadata layer, a data dictionary that joins tables in the background for you. So it allows you to go access the data in the different tables for you, and it appears seamless to the end user. Same day access to custom tables. So if you have a custom table within CSD, once that's loaded into Data Lake, Cyberquery can go and do that import of that new table and give you access to that data within one day. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, the experienced cyber science professional services. So she was able to get a lot of help, a lot of experience within the Infor world, as well as SX.e and CSD now. Couple example reports that she developed with Cyberquery was an end-of-month reporting. And the prior tool, it had taken them 2.5 days to do the full compiling, aggregation, and to develop those month-end reports. Often data would get sent into Excel, move the data around. I'm sure you guys are familiar with these types of processes to get that final output of the report you're looking for. This process was updated on a monthly basis to where they could just have Cyberquery run the reports and automatically be distributed to those key stakeholders. So now it takes minutes to run and distribute that information. In addition, they were able to add parameter-driven reports that were made available for different departments such as finance, pricing, and purchasing. Another example of a report developed was a pricing report, and this reduced their aggregating process down to 2 to 3 times. So another huge time saving for them. And they did this by creating data snapshots, what we call in Cyberquery hold files. It's essentially a data mart within Cyberquery. And they did that for CSD pricing at a multi-level, and that included specific codes and price types. This, in addition, allowed them to have parameter-driven reports that they could provide additional insight for their users. And overall, this, of course, increased efficiency and accuracy for their customer pricing. So she was very excited with the quick return that she was able to get with using Cyberquery. Before we jump into the demonstration, I think this is a good time to have a quick questions about kind of Cyberscience, the company, and the product. Brian, do you have any questions
Yep.
pop up yet?
Yeah, it sounds great. So again, folks, please use the chat button for any questions you might have, or send me any questions privately if you prefer. I do have one question, Brad.
Yep.
So how long does it take to implement Cyberquery with SX.e versus CSD?
So with SX.e, we have a native connection into Progress. We've had that for over 25 years. That speeds it up a little bit because the data lake is taken out of the picture. So it typically takes a couple hours to install Cyberquery, another hour or so to load the metadata for the data dictionary to access that progress data, and you're getting data back in 4 hours. So it really is fast to get it within SXE. I would add another 4 hours for CSD because there is the process of setting up the extract from data load and then doing that load, depending on how much data, of course, can depend to. And then we move into setting up things like what are your incremental updates? Does it need to be daily, hourly, every 15 minutes? So just a little bit more configuration with that data load process in CSD.
Oh, terrific. Thanks, Brad. At this point, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, so we'll just go ahead and continue on,
All
please.
right. Hey, thank you. So let's jump into the demo side here. With Cyberquery, it has its own web server. Typically, this server, it can be installed local or it can be on a hosted server that NSA can provide you with as well. It initially starts out and asks for my login. We support Active Directory as well, so I'll put in my operating system username and password. Of course, it helps when you type in the password, guys. Sorry. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. We've all had days like that, right? So once I get into this area, it's asking me where I want to connect with Cyberquery to. So do I want to go into an SXE environment or a CSD environment? I'm going to go ahead and show the CSD environment for today. So if I click on the Launchpad section, this is showing me the different modules that I have access to within Cyberquery. Launchpad is I'm going to start out with Launchpad. It is the distribution reporting portal. So I'll click on that. Within here, this is where reports have been published. And I have different areas for reports that can be published from whatever's been developed within Cyberquery, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the work in progress area. This is just a demo environment, so we typically have it in here until a production environment. These are different reports that have been developed within Cyberquery, and I'm just going to show a few of them here to try to keep us on our timeline. Here's an all open purchase orders. You see a little running guy here that says go get me the latest data. You can also have commands that it's a clone command that says pull a working copy of that query into the developer and make some changes to that copy. You can subscribe to this and say I want to receive it on a weekly basis in a certain format, maybe Excel, PDF. So if I click on this all open purchase orders, goes out, it runs this report, and this one happens to output into Excel for me. So if I click on this Excel file, it will go ahead and pull up my open purchase orders report. It should pop up in Excel for me. Now, keep in mind, anytime I move this into Excel or this report output is into Excel, it is static until I refresh it. There are other ways to create more of a hot link to that, to have it output into Excel, but just keep that in mind. We'll close that for now. Come back. Let's choose my job tracking sales, just to give you guys a feel for different types of reports. This one happens to have several parameters. I will go ahead and check the default here, and you'll see it several fields. You can do, I have my different parameters listed at the top of the report here, just to give you another example of a type of report within Cyberquery. You really can create very complex reports here, financial statements, so the balance sheets, income statements with drill downs. You can do it all in regards to reporting. I have not come across in 25 years a report that we haven't been able to develop. Let me show you a sales compose dashboard. This is a way to have multiple reports be created and structured in a dashboard format, including visualization. So as Brian mentioned earlier, it's not just that ad hoc and data discovery type tool. It can really go through and create things like dashboards as well. I'll finish out with the sales revenue by inside sales rep report. This one I believe has a drill down as well that I can drill into. It shows things like you can expand into different types of fields. You can also drill into here, say, okay, we'll go ahead and drill into that information. This one also goes into Excel, and it shows me that specific data. So this is a predetermined drill for Brandy Alderman to show for that customer name all the different details. Okay. Let me get back to the different modules that I can show you today. I'm going to talk about the dictionary manager, won't jump into it. This really, there's a lot of power I mentioned earlier. It allows us to make the data be a little bit more user-friendly. I'll show you an example of that soon. In addition, we can put things like derived fields, calculated fields at the dictionary level, so they just appear as a field to you when you use Cyberquery. And as mentioned before, the relationships are defined at the data dictionary level. That really makes the tool a lot more user-friendly when people are going to find the fields in the different tables. CQ Publish, I'll show you just that real quickly. This is how those reports are published into Launchpad. You'll see that these different areas here, these folders match what you were seeing within Launchpad here. For example, that work in progress, if I click on that, you're seeing those different reports that I had shown you earlier and executed. QDirector, I'll pull that up real quick as well. QDirector, whereas Launchpad people pull information to themselves, you provide them with access to it based on security, of course. QDirector allows you, sorry, it always shows up here at the bottom here. QDirector allows you to push information out to people. So you can go through and create new jobs that get sent out. This is probably as good a time as any to talk about. We have a macro language within Cyberquery. With a macro language, you're able to do sequential steps. So sometimes a report needs to be developed where it stages data, and then another query is off of that. Within a macro, you can set that all up and schedule it. So all you do is run that macro, have it scheduled, and that final report that someone wants is there in their inbox, or it's going ahead and put out to a folder, for example. In addition, that macro allows you to jump into command line editors. You can do secure FTP. You can send data different places. So it can be used as a data transmission tool as well. It's very powerful. I'll now jump into Cyberquery, the developer. You'll see that the developer runs completely within HTML, within a browser. That change was made a few years back. There are a few different ways to create a report visually with the drag and drop in Cyberquery, and then there's the language editor in the background. As I do the drag and drop graphical editor, it's building that Cyberquery language that I mentioned to you that's very English-like. It's asking me right now, well, what type of report do I want to start out with? I'm going to go ahead today, start out with a sum report. A sum report is a lot of times like a pivot table. I like to say in Cyberquery, it's like a pivot table on steroids because you can access all the data. You don't have to go get a subset of data first. Next, it's asking me, well, where are most of the fields and the data that I want on this report? We call it a domain file. You might be familiar with a primary table or a source table or source file. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and use my order entry line table. And I will go ahead and click on that as my primary table. And you will see quickly it's showing me the different fields I want to summarize on. I'm going to do, well, just by default, we add something called a units, which is the number of transactions that happens within this table. So I'm going to go ahead and summarize that. And let's summarize it by, how about my enter date, okay? And then just click finish. Earlier, I had mentioned with the data dictionary that we can make the data files, files and fields look a lot more user-friendly. That is called a viewpoint. So if I come on here to a viewpoint and I choose, for example, end user, look over to the left section where I have all my tables and fields. And if I choose end user, it quickly goes in there and changes it to a more user-friendly look and feel. That thing is dynamic. You can switch back and forth. So if you have certain users that are more familiar with these common names, but you want to send it back to NSA or ourselves because we happen to know the native names, we can just switch it back and forth to help you to troubleshoot types of reports. Since a lot of folks, my understanding, are familiar with the native names, I'm gonna go ahead and just switch it back to native for the rest of the demonstration. And there you have it. Quickly, I had those number of transactions within my order entry table by year because I chose by date. And as a summary, we start out with high level. If I want to look at this in different ways, I can go ahead and, for example, let's say I want to look at it by quarter. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just hit insert copy. And let's do item properties. Look at the different sort level and change it from year. And I'm going to change that to quarter. Really quickly, you can see that I have the same type of report by quarter. If I want subtotals on this report, that's easy as well. I can click on here and right click, show subtotals, and it quickly shows the subtotals. At any time, if I want to move this report into Excel or to an HTML, PDF, etc., you can see there are many different ways to output this. But let's say I always want this report to go to Excel, similar to what you were seeing in Launchpad. I can also say report properties, output this thing as Excel, click OK. Now, if I ever go and just run the query, it knows, well, put this thing into Excel for me, right? And the cool thing about when we do our subtotals and send it into Excel, see how these subtotal formulas and the report total formula automatically goes into Excel for you. So it makes it really nice if you want to go and expand off of that. One of my favorite things I like to do is undo. I'll show you that here in a second, but let me go ahead and remove that total off of my, there's different ways you can do it. You can right click it, you can click on it and remove it as well. Now I've removed my subtotals. Let's go ahead and drag my quarter field up into the cross section. See how easy that was to now just look at it across for the years. And I want to go ahead and let's say insert a bullet chart, for example, to get some visualization. Again, there you go. The undo, click the undo, keep going, and you can see you can do unlimited undo, unlimited redo. I think I might want to look at this by quarters later, but right now I don't want to have to rebuild that. Well, we added something recently called a parking lot. I'm going to drag that quarter date field into my parking lot. What's nice about this is it remembers that it was in the across section. You can also store things like conditions too. So when you're starting to build like a where clause, and then just drag it back anytime you want, park it, unpark it. It really makes it easy to work with it in that way. I mentioned earlier that there's relationships at the dictionary for these different tables. So if I go to my order entry header table and I want to see, well, what invoices exist, and I could have typed it in there too, but there's not a ton of fields here. I can go and say, all right, well, show me all the invoices within there, right? And it quickly shows me the different invoice numbers within those different order entry lines. In addition, I can go in and put the order number here if I want. So I can drag that in here too as well. And it will show you the different orders within those invoices because it knows to connect those tables correctly at the dictionary. And when you drag them on to Cyberquery, it displays correctly. Okay. So I've showed you how to access fields quickly from a couple different tables. Well, there are other ways to make it even easier for certain users. This, after a couple of days of training, most people feel comfortable with going and getting access to and pulling fields from different tables. But by all means, you can make this thing extremely simple for people by coming through and creating a data mart. Now we include a data mart called ECQ Sales Data Mart. I'm gonna go ahead and show you an example of that right now. Click next. This pulls fields from up to, I want to say 8 to 10 different tables, and it flattens it out so you don't even have to bother with going out and accessing fields from different tables. And what this does is, and this gets loaded every time we do incremental updates, so it's just there for certain users. I'm gonna do a similar type report I showed earlier. I'll go ahead and click units, but how about I go ahead and summarize that by state and click finish. Quickly, you'll see a summary of those different orders by state. How about I want to go ahead and just show, let's hide this blank one. Cyberquery is great at going ahead and seeing if people are entering in data incorrectly and even sending them reports back saying, hey, you're not entering this incorrectly, please work on this. But let's say, let's hide the blank data here and let's do some ranking here. So I want to rank the units here and let's do just the top 10. So I'll come in here, do a maximum of 10, suppress other, click OK, and there I have it. Okay, real quick way to work with the reports, or with the data. If I ever want to throw this into a chart, really easy, come in here, convert it to a chart, and quickly comes through, puts it as a bar chart. You can do regression lines, etc. You can change it to a line chart as well. So we have an entire visualization editor to work with it to look at it graphically. I'll switch this back to a sum report. And let's say I want to focus on a region here and I want to choose, let's say Illinois and Wisconsin and create a category. And let's call these, how about great states? Great states, or Great Lakes. They're also great states, by the way. I click OK, instantly creates a category for me, joining those together. If I want to drill down into this information, I can go as well and drill and say, well, let's look into North Carolina. And I would like to drill into product line description, and it instantly drills into that product line description for me as well. So real quick, easy way for data discovery.
Well, Brad, some really powerful stuff there. Oh, I thought we had questions. Sorry.
Well, we're coming up on that, Brian. So the test drive, I wanted to talk about that in case this also gets some questions for us, Brian. So we always offer a 30-day test drive. This allows you to get Cyberquery installed on your system. If it's CSD, that data lake data loaded, so you can write reports. And we'll develop a couple reports for you. So we do ask you to come to us with some information you would like to see. We'll develop those reports, let you play with it for 30 days and get your hands on it to see, how easy it is to use without even training. But of course, training is required as you move forward. The subscription and the training isn't scheduled until after the end of that test drive. And Brian, were you going to talk a little bit about the special offer we're having for those who've joined us today?
Weaver or me?
Jones.
Oh, I can talk about this. Sure, sure. What we will do is we'll double the length of the test drive to 60 days, and essentially to the end of March. If you contact one of us, we will, like I said, double that 30 days to 60 days. Now, again, there is a little setup and things like that needs to be done with this, but the idea is we want to get you in and using the software, getting a feel for what it can do, and like Brad said, ideally come to us with a few reports that we will work to develop out the system and show you how they work. And kind of the proof is in the testing. So
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, guys, so that's a great no-risk offer for anyone that wants to actually give this a test drive and see how it goes. Some really powerful capabilities there, Brad, as well in the demonstration. So again, as a reminder, please enter your questions into the chat box. We do have a couple of questions here. So one of them I think was prompted by something Brian said earlier. So what other data sources can Cyberquery read?
I always come back to databases here, right? So Oracle, DB2, Sybase, Microsoft SQL, COBOL, pretty much, I'd probably say 95% of the databases that are out there. But in addition, we can set it up to read things like CSV files. Anything where we can see a tab delimiter between those, a delimiter between those fields, then we can set Cyberquery up to read it as if it's a database.
All right, that sounds great. Here's a really good question as well. Can this help with converting SX.e to CSD?
Yes, Brian touched on this a little earlier because the reports and that data dictionary is very similar from SX.e to CSD. There are some changes regarding like arrayed fields going away, but in general, it is very similar. So to move reports over from SX.e to CSD, it's typically days, not weeks. So it is quick. It really helps.
then there's a question in the chat here too. Since we have Burst included in our subscription, what is the pricing model for this product? Do you want to take that, Brad? Or
I will. So there is a base package, and we can get into that a little bit more if you want to have further discussion. There's a base package that includes so many report developers and so many report runtimes, and then you can add on from there. And it's done in a subscription model, so it is typically monthly. We often encourage that it moves over to annually after everyone's happy after the first several months. So.
Terrific. Looks like that's all the questions we have for now, Brad, if we want to continue on.
Okay, so next steps, guys, Brian Weaver touched on it as well. You can reach out to any one of us. We can answer your questions. I have the information right here, and of course, you'll get a recording for this. And I appreciate everyone joining us today. So thank you again, and we look forward to talking to you guys to make sure you're getting access to all that data on CSD.
Yeah, Brad and Brian, thank you both for presenting today. And folks, that's a wrap. Please reach out to us. Please take advantage of that special promo we've got, that 60-day free trial. We'll look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, and we'll give you back the rest of your hour.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
thanks, everyone.